G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Australian Property Investment Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Christie David. I run a mortgage broking business called Atelier Wealth, where we specialise in helping property investors start out and scale up their property portfolio. And the centerpiece of that is really about making confident property decisions. When it comes to making confident decisions, often a big part of that, you would have heard a lot of our guests in the past say they do a lot of work around their self-development, self-improvement, for example, and putting a lot of investment into their own knowledge and well-being. So I thought, off the back of being inspired by my daughter's book week recently, let's do a couple of books, which is all around money and mindset. Now, the reason why I say we want to look at a few books is because knowledge is power. And there's a great saying, they say readers are leaders. I say learners are earners. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we've done in our team, in our business recently, is go through Atomic Habits as a team. And I've just found the compound effect of sharing the knowledge as a team and what we've all learnt and sharing the insights. It's just been astronomical. So I thought, hey, look, why don't we talk about a few books that are really close to our heart, books that if you kind of want to improve your financial savviness, here's a couple of titles to check out as well. And I'm joined today, I'm really excited, Damien Walker, one of our gun mortgage brokers. G'day, mate. How you doing?
Good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. And Nate Condie, I won't say new team member because you've been with us for quite a few years, but I'd say that foray into mortgage broking more recently. So Nate was what we call a para broker and junior credit analyst, has now come up through the ranks and absolutely killing it. So pleasure to have you on here.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, excellent. So before we do kick off, I want to just stress that this is a general chat and not intended to give advice. So if you do need advice, please seek out a qualified professional to do so. Guys, I think we've had a chat and we're at the coalface of talking to a lot of clients who are maybe dealing with cost of living pressures. It's a different time. We've gone from seeing record low rates to seeing rates rise quite a pace as well. And it's really putting, I guess, the budgeting conversation front and center. It's like what's coming in, what's going out, and most people, I won't say shirk that conversation, but just go, oh, I'm not really sure. Mm-hmm. And you probably would have heard me say this before. I call it state of wallet equals state of mind. So when things are kind of going well from a money perspective, it shows up in the way that your view of the world is. Whereas when you're getting really tight towards paydays, and we've all been there, your view of the world's a little bit dim and darker. And you have that survivor mentality. One thing that I probably see between the three of us is where we are in life as well. Nate in your 20s, Damien in your moving to your 30s, and now me moving into my 40s. There's such different money stages, and it's that classic cliche. I wish I knew then what I know now, and I'd be in a much different space. So, how do we kind of fast track someone Nate in your 20s, your financial growth, that you don't have to make the same mistakes that people have gone before you?
Exactly right. And when we were talking about these different stages in your life, the 20s, 30s, 40s, obviously 30s, looking back, where Nate is now, remembering where I was at the time. Right. And I remember Bernadette, your wife, my sister, taking me through, sitting me down, giving me the Barefoot Investor, telling me a few tips and tricks to help, manage my money. Yeah. And now looking where Nate is, obviously at that same path, but so much more knowledge around him to sort of correct those, wrong mistakes that people do make a bit earlier on.
Isn't it? And then I think when we said the word budget, you kind of went, well, hang on, dirty word. And take us through. I mean, why does your mind automatically? No, I won't say it goes defensive, but it just goes, oh, I'm not really sure.
Probably because I don't have one.
Yeah.
And more so because I am too, deep in the numbers when if something doesn't exactly match up with what I've budgeted for, I'm, on the back foot.
Yeah.
And I'm wanting to change it.
Yeah. It's almost like when you're training and then you have a diet blowout, you're like, that's it, it's all over. And it's like, well, hang on. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to make some progress. Yeah. And with budgets, I know that we're all probably financially better off for having Bernadette in our lives as well, which means I don't know why she's not on this episode, but we will get her back on for book review part 2. But I'd say that Bernadette, I've seen it with your own parents. For example, Bernie and I would go down to your parents' place on a Saturday morning and they'd pull out the spreadsheet with their mortgage repayments and Bernie would track their mortgage repayments, go, guys, you got to start making more additional payments.
That's right.
And your parents are able to pay their home off in kind of pronto time, probably because someone kept them to account. Same with you, which was, hey, mate, read the Barefoot Investor and get your bucket sorted, right?
That was right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, I was very blessed growing up in that household where we were open with money. So we saw from a very young age, Dad would be very, this is the money coming in, this is the money coming out, and this is the mortgage. Really, when you're a bit younger, you don't really take too much in at that time. But just being surrounded by people who talk about money like that, it's always been a blessing. So, yeah, seeing that firsthand, especially when you've got someone to hold you accountable. So even though Mum and Dad had a great budget, Bernadette stepping in and going, all right, well, let's review this every week, every month. Yeah. Let's see where you're at. Ultimate goal is retirement. Ultimate goal is no debt. Yeah. Well, let's work towards that and let's put a plan in place.
Correct. Yeah, I can personally say that by Bernie managing our household budget, but most importantly, the business cash flow. Yeah. We probably see this time and time again, small businesses that's probably what they are doing. They've got great businesses, but it's the financial mismanagement that comes along with that as well. It's quite often, their tax debts, for example, cash flows hemorrhaging, for example. That's probably something that Bernie's been really vigilant in this business going, the financial health will then ultimately dictate the business's performance. And we make decisions from a much better place financially as well. I guess the centerpiece to that, the piece de resistance in our business would be what we call the 13-week rolling cash flow. So what that means is we're looking at the cash flow, what's coming in and what's going out in the next 13 weeks. And where is it going to go red at some point in the future? And what do we need to jig around from expenses? We did the same thing with our household, which I know that Ben's going to take you through that as well. Ben's probably done that exercise with yourself. He's going to take you through that as well, right, Nate? And I think that's a really good alternative to a budget, because a budget, what you're saying is it's too static. And if something comes up, my spreadsheet doesn't account for this. Whereas a cash flow over the next 13 weeks will go, hey, mate, look, you might have a boys' weekend away coming up. That's going to burn $1,000 in the back pocket, for example. Yeah. Well, why don't we just budget for that in the next couple of weeks rather than it hitting like a bit of bill shock as well, yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be easier because, Nate, starting fresh, not too many expenses, start now. And then as your life goes on, you grow and grow and grow. Yeah. And then, that's talking into something called lifestyle creep, right? And
isn't it?
You haven't started young and you have unmanaged expenses, soon it's quite hard to control and it's quite hard to reel it back in. So, starting young, getting that going, it's always going to be beneficial.
Isn't it? Atomic Habits nailed this part, and I think we spoke about it as a team. I think the Diderot effect, whereas it was a really great analogy. So if you're not comfortable if you're not aware of it, I'll put a link into the show notes as well. But it said, it gave an analogy about this old philosopher. He bought a brand new robe and then everything else looked out of place. So he upgraded everything in his house. So now, the robe didn't look out of place. And we see that time and time again. I mean, you look statistically, when people buy a new home, within 6 months, 60% will buy a brand new car because now that old car looks out of place. You buy the brand new furniture, now the rug looks out of place, and it's that lifestyle creep. You tend to upgrade and upgrade and upgrade, for example. And if you can kind of be aware of that, awareness is one part, and then making sure that you're kind of keeping yourself in check is another part as well, yeah?
And what about you, ACD, for you're in your 40s now.
Yes.
So you're in a different stage to Nate and I
Yep.
with the family. How does that, because Nate, you're managing yourself, I'm managing myself and my partner.
Yep.
Nothing too major.
Yeah.
You've got a partner and now 2 kids.
Yeah.
How do you find that?
Yeah, I think there's a tendency, right, which is when you go out, you're a little bit flippant. It's a cafe will cost us no less than $60 if we're doing breakfast, for example. Now, $60 in isolation is cool. Do that every month, do that every week or twice a week, and it starts to add up. So there's some decisions that you got to make. Going, right, let's pack a picnic and go to the park, for example, and we've got to show our kids that we're managing our money. That's the small behaviours they're going to learn. Yeah. We've got a decent sized mortgage and other debts for investment purposes. And it's like, right, we've got to play the long game here. Yep. And yes, the ego for me sometimes shows up where maybe want the newer car, right? And I drive a much older car these days, partly because the kids trash it. I'll blame them. But the ego, and it's delayed gratification for me. I'm like, I've got to play the long game. Yep. So the way I look at where my priorities lie, we were just speaking about health before. There's a couple of things that start to show up in your health and well-being. I'd put that number one. Like my gym and my well-being stuff that's number one priority for me. Yeah. So eating well, eating clean, training well. Family time, for example, is then number 2. So the possessions, for example, and maybe what I used to define myself in my 20s, 20s I had a bloody black convertible. It was silly, right? Yeah. You remember Rocky up with this convertible. Fun, ego-driven, but very bad financial decision. If I'd bought a property and the repayments on that cost me nearly $1,000 a month, if I'd bought a property then, I'd be in a much different place.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think for me it's letting go of the ego. It's teaching my kids good money behaviours. And also people internally in the business are probably looking at me as going, well, where's his money going as well? And I've got to lead from the front. So I think having a really good example around that too. So kind of we do it for our clients, we'll be able to do it for ourselves and also our team is a philosophy that I'm big on. What about yourself? I mean, because you're in the midst of trying to buy.
Yes.
Yep. So, are we talking about cutting back on lifestyle as well? Take us through the first-time buyer journey.
Yeah, it's a good one. So I reckon at the start of this year, so 2023, that's when we really knuckled down and said, all right, well, let's start to save.
Yep.
The budget got stripped back. We were lucky enough to move in with our in-laws, save on rental expense, and that really helped us boost our savings. But it is a case of, going out on the weekends, the same thing. It's that cafe breakfast. It's the Uber Eats. Yeah. It's just the Ubering around, the drinking, all of that. It really does add up. So I think that not to stop yourself from those experiences, but what we've found is it's like a once a week type of activity instead of, Saturday, Sunday, and then also maybe midweek as well. So really that's where we, doing your shopping, making sure you're doing your shopping on the Sunday or whatever your day is, planning your meals so you don't get trapped in the whole nothing to eat, let's go and get takeaway. Yeah. So that's probably a big one. But those types of changes we've definitely been making, and the end result is for us to have a higher deposit and to get a property.
Yeah, well said. So there's no greater desire to save than when you're trying to buy your first home. Like you will make every single sacrifice possible for the greater good, right? And then I guess for Nate, fortunate living at home, expenses are low. That probably means that you have a level of, let's say, unaccountability, but you probably a level of easiness about what's coming in and what's going out, right?
For sure. And this book has kind of taught me, which we'll get to in a bit, the Barefoot Investor, I'm sure. Yeah. Kind of now's the time to put plan into action. Because as you said, I don't have a budget. Getting on top of it now. So when I am in, say, Damien's position, I'm ready.
Correct. Can you imagine what a property, 10 years, I mean, they say probably may double every 7 to 10 years as an average. Can you imagine buying a property in your mid-20s, late 20s, and then having that double by the time you get to, say, Damien's age? It's blows your mind when it's scary when you think about it. We see that with our younger investors. Trinity, Matt in our team, if you check out that podcast, we'll put a link to it as well. Young team member, 2 properties under her belt, and you go, mate, where she's going to be at my age is almost scary, isn't it? If she keeps on that path. So I guess one of the other episodes and series that I watched recently that kind of got me really thinking about this, which has sparked this conversation, was How to Get Rich series. It's a guy called Ramit on Netflix. And what he's doing is taking couples and putting money in the conversation, which is quite often this is not what we speak about as a couple. It's unsexy. We put it to the side. And we've got very, very different money patterns or behaviors or approaches to money, right? So that got me thinking, man, one of the big parts in there that he mentioned was, I mean, I looked at his net worth. He's worth over $25 million. So he's not short of a quid, but he still rents in New York. Yeah, he doesn't buy. And I was like, that's interesting. And he even talks about it, going, most people will judge him for not having bought his home in apartment in New York. He prefers to rent, but he invests the property. I was like, I do feel like the American market is different to the Australian market, and we were speaking about this as well, definitely. Right?
Yeah, well, and if we're talking about New York City, God, that's an established property market. Yeah. I think I was speaking to a buyer's agent the other day. We were talking about, where Sydney is right now, and it's getting to the point where people are finding it unaffordable and a little bit, scary how high prices are going. But if you look at places like Hong Kong, Singapore, New York City, they're very, very established where prices continue to increase. And sometimes buying in those areas are quite hard.
Isn't it?
Even for someone with 25 million, you're probably outlaying a lot of that wealth into one asset, which doesn't really make sense if you're going to diversify.
Yeah, but I guess there's one part that I can say from a home buying perspective is having that security. Rent money is not dead money.
Yeah.
And yep, we could have invested. We went down the path of rent vesting, but at some point it gets to a point in your life where you go, hey, we really want to put down roots. We don't want to be at the mercy of a landlord.
Yep.
We want to own something. And you look at all the statistics around long-term wealth building, having your own paid off, and that security means that when we get to retirement age, we're not worried about being kicked to the curb or having to sell our investment properties, because we all still need that roof over our head. And I think other markets, Europe have it, America probably has it. You can have longer lease terms.
Yes.
You can negotiate quite a few years, for example, whereas Australia's 1 to 2 years, and then they're going to jack up the rent. If you don't like it, you can leave it, and then you've got to try and find somewhere, especially when you have kids, you're going to be in the school catchment. You're trying to minimize that disruption as well, right? So there's no real wins off the back of that. So let's get into some books. We spoke about, Nate, I'll probably get you to start if you like. You mentioned about the Barefoot Investor.
Yeah, so I've got the best-selling Australian book of all time, supposedly. So it talks about, I guess, the 3 stages of investing. So planting the seed, watching the seeds grow, and then harvesting.
Yeah.
For me, the main thing is planting the seed. Where I am now, getting it, I guess, in a position where I can put some habits into place. So in the future, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And I mean, we spoke about this, like everyone walked around with ING cards labeled quite a while ago when the book came out.
Yep.
And look, Scott Paper's got some wonderful things in there, wonderful things around money behaviors. I guess one of the big challenges between when it's written and now is this need to save for a 20% deposit.
Yes.
Right. I mean, we think about where we are, our office is down in the Illawarra, for example. If a couple started now, it'd take them 20 years to save for an average home, which is about $950,000 on an average income, versus being in that home, maybe 5-10% deposit, paying some mortgage insurance. So I guess we take all these books and you take the message out of it.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be biblical in the way that you apply it to your own life as well, right?
Exactly right. And if you talk about the 20% deposit, like when this book was written, was the first home guarantee a policy that the government had announced yet? Probably not. So there are ways around certain things in that book, or things that have evolved now, which is for the betterment of people looking to buy.
Yeah, nice. And what about your book, Damien? What do you...
So it was Atomic Habits.
Yep.
So that's one we've been discussing at work. So we're doing our accelerator where we discuss a book with our whole team.
Yeah.
And I've read this book. I think Bernadette gave me that book. You gave me that book a while ago. Yeah. So it was very, I mean, the thing I took out of it, which really helped me was, it's the small things you do in life every day, which will set you on to get you to that bigger picture later down the track. And it's the way you create those habits, like just tips and tricks on how to do it. And I've got one written down here. So the 4 laws of behaviour when you're creating a new habit. So make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So you're not trying to go out there and go, I've never worked out before. I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. every day and do 100 push-ups because you probably haven't done a push-up in the last however many years. So you got to make it easier. How about, while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, I'll do 10. Yeah. And then after I do 10, I just eat my normal breakfast. It might be sugary Cocoa Pops, good on you. Yeah. But you're pairing that habit, you're pairing the habits together. Yeah. And then over time, as you get better and you acquire better habits, you'll change other habits in your life. Yes. So, that's what we're currently reading. And, I think there's a lot to take from that, just the small things you do every day.
I agree. Was there one, make it visible? Was there something, what was the...
Make it visible.
Yeah. Make it visible.
Make it attractive. Yeah. Yeah. Make it obvious.
Make it obvious. So I mean, for me, and again, Bernadette's probably the driving force behind this, is on my bathroom wall, there's my vision board for the year. Yeah. Right. So having it front and center. I know some people even have it in their cars, for example. They've got on their little mirror where you can just see it every day. Going, this is what I'm aiming for. And, maybe it's the picture of the home that you want, for example, or it's having $50,000 saved up. But if it's like you're seeing it daily, it's just going to keep feeding your brain with this is what we're working towards, this is what we're striving for.
And also, like, if you can get someone else in on it with you, so very accountability, that's probably the biggest life hack.
Isn't it?
If you've got someone else working towards that same goal and you can hold each other accountable, it's pretty hard to fail.
Yeah, you can negotiate with yourself. When
very easily.
Yeah. And we see this all the time with people. We call them, going, how's your savings for your deposits going? Had a blowout, took a holiday, now I'm back to zero. It's like, guys, come on, stay the course. And the book even talks about it, like just being 1 degree off course. I think I talked about the airplane, like ending up in a completely different location. Yes. So you just, those like spending can take you just a little bit. 1 day is not going to change it. 365 days will definitely change the trajectory in the course that you're on as well. So there's no, if you fall off 1% one day, it's easy to go back, but you take it over a week and over a month, bad habits will lead to bad decisions, and that creeps up into like totally being off course. And now you're like, I'm not sure how hard it is to get back on track versus just trying to stay close to being on track as well. One book that I've fallen in love with a long time ago is The Richest Man in Babylon. This is a nice tale, for example. It's a bit like The Alchemist, another book that I've loved. But this just kind of gives you a bit of a fable, for example, around money habits. One thing that I loved in here is, when you're asking, you're not going to the butcher for financial advice, for example. It's like you pick who you're going to. Like they're picking out the richest person, asking for their financial advice. And that's what we're talking about, like money mentors, for example. That's why we're bringing people that have built larger portfolios, because what they're telling us is it's a mindset thing. If I can do it, you can do it. They're not saying they're any special than anyone else. And that's one thing that I really enjoyed about this book. And I got recommended to this guy when we were on this holiday in Thailand, and I feel like that's the book that's the conversation that really changed our financial path as well. There's a couple of books here. I've got Kosh's Money Plans. Think and Grow Rich is a classic as well. If you can sink your teeth into that, that's a great one. We've got The 7 Habits, which I feel like there's a really strong personal development, but again, it talks about start with the end in mind. And that's, again, if you're applying that to buying a home or investing in property, what are you looking to do long game wise? And then how do you bring that back to what your next step is going to be? There's A Simple Path to Wealth, which is great. The other book, which I don't have here, but I think is highly recommended, and you jump on YouTube and get the download, which is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Now, this one here is it's a recent one that's come out, but I've seen plenty of reviews. That's on my book list to check out. So I'll probably get that reviewed next time as well. So what else have you?
Well, I was going to talk about the Babylon.
Yeah, let's go for it.
The Richest Man in Babylon. So yeah, there is a story. I think he went to the brick mason to get advice on buying jewels.
Yes.
And obviously it didn't pay off.
I think it sold stones or something, right? It sold like a fake.
Yeah, it was just like, why did you do that? Like, you're going to lose your money. So the same thing. It's like maybe you're at your workplace and someone's telling you about buying property somewhere.
Or buying cryptos.
Buying crypto. That's probably a better example. Buying crypto is the big one.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about it. You don't know anything about it. Everyone's reading headlines. Speak to an expert. Speak to a financial planner. Speak to a buyer's agent. Seek advice from professionals or people with experience, because there's a lot of charlatans out there as well. So just
nothing against crypto. People have made some great money off the back of it. If it's your poison, go in on it. Don't have to go all in on it, but just do your research.
Yes,
do your research.
Yeah,
and Kiyosaki. We've got a couple of Rob Kiyosaki books here. He's kind of the godfather when it comes to investing. So if you just think about kind of filling your head with some good quality information, for example, it can be this podcast. There's so many other great podcasts that when you kind of go, it's a cluttered space, right? Finances and property. Some of the books that I didn't put here and for just cause is when they say simple or the easy guide to, I'm like, investing in property is not easy. It's just not. It takes time. It takes diligence. It takes major risk, because it is financial outcome that you're looking for. But ultimately, what I feel like a lot of these books will boil down to is make more money. So invest in yourself and try and grow your talent. So make more money, spend less money, and invest more money.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So take that as kind of the mantra, and they just wrap this up around their philosophy, their framework, and you'll gravitate to people. I mean, Scott Pape is someone that you're now learning about, and you go deeper down the rabbit hole of Scotty Pape, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. There's one little parting comment that I want to share with people, and I feel like this is when we start to talk about people about saving for a deposit and being an active or trying to buy an investment property. And there's an active property buyer and there's a passive property buyer, and we see this time and time again, people that are in the market but not actively taking steps to pull the trigger and buy something. And it says, don't tell me where your priorities are. Show me where you spend your time and money, and I'll tell you what they are. And we see this. Show me your bank statement. Show me your diary, and I can pretty much tell you what your priorities are. It's kind of telling, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Any other parting words of wisdom before we wrap up?
No, I think we wrapped it up pretty well. I think, make more, spend less, invest more. Yeah, it's very true. That's what all these books are about.
Yeah.
Find who speaks to you, find the voice that you gravitate to, and, try and apply those habits.
Yeah. Nate?
That's it. If only it were that easy.
Yeah, we agree. I should have mentioned this at the start. If you're listening to this episode, you may want to jump on YouTube or our video version of this and actually see what we've got here. As well, the three of us jumping on. And if this episode has resonated with you and you want to talk to us about a couple of books that we've got or some insights, we're all ears. We're here to help, and we'd love to talk shop with you on some of the books that we've got. I know that we constantly give away books, so any authors that we get to come onto our podcast, we always ask for a couple of copies to give away. So Damien's also got a really great hack around Spotify, you mentioned.
Yes, that's right. So with some of these older books, like The Richest Man in Babylon, there were a few others on there. Type it in the book name and type in Audible book or audio book, and you'll be surprised some of them come up for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can listen to the book. If times are tough, we've borrowed books from the library as well, so it's a great way to access knowledge. So you don't have to buy the books, for example, but sometimes you can get the resources for free.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's a different episode, but I really hope you've enjoyed this. We're kind of talking money, mindset, and some really great titles that we've read. And if you've got a money book that we haven't covered that you'd like to see here, or you want to share that's made an impact on your life, please feel free to reach out to us, drop us a comment, or even better, leave us a review as well. And until next time, take care.